Tape recorder's running, right? Tape recorder's running.
Hey, Steve Smith.
Hello, Brett Starr. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing so great and so good to see you and to be recording another episode of Work Tech Weekly. As Mr. Beast would say, smash that subscribe button. I don't know. Or the like button or comment or just do something. All you folks out there.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm good. I was hoping that you would be wearing your cowboy hat today, but I guess that's sort of a dicey proposition when you're wearing headphones.
I forgot all hats today, and also I've started a new hair care routine that includes like a Rogaine type situation.
Oh, really?
Which CEOs have recently been accused of oversharing, so this is probably oversharing, but I can't put a hat on for like 2 hours after I put this like stuff in my hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm embarrassed that I'm have dipped my toe in the pool of vanity to where I'm actually trying to do something about the way I look. But there it is. So no cowboy hats, no baseball caps. Just trying to grow that vertex back, man.
Well, I only brought it up because of your dude ranch experience on your vacation. I thought you might come back, going full cowboy.
No. If anything, going to a dude ranch and then returning to Fort Worth, Texas, caused me to double down on the notion that I'm not a cowboy and will never be one.
Fair enough.
You ever been to a dude ranch?
Yeah. Yeah, my daughter went to a dude ranch in West Texas for several years when she was growing up. So,
no kidding.
Yeah. So it was a great experience. I mean, I didn't have to go, so They didn't put me on a horse, but it was great. It was a great experience for the kids.
Yeah, we had a great time. Probably the only time we'll ever do it, but it was fantastic.
Well, good.
How was your summer? Anything exciting happened in your summer?
No. It was just a lot of relaxation. Went to Mexico, did some travel around the U.S., and so yeah, it was a really nice, relaxing summer. It was getting out again after a couple of years of just kind of being at home, so it felt good.
All right. Well, welcome back. We are slouching towards the fall, and everything gets a little bit crazier and a little bit busier in work tech, starting late August and going through usually May, June.
Yeah.
So we're about to get busy, and it's a great time to catch back up, talk about what's going on from a shareholder experience perspective in work tech. And a couple of topics that we thought might be interesting to talk about today that we've been talking a lot about internally. Number one is return to work again. Here it is. And then I think just broadly speaking, establishing leadership momentum in uncertain times. So two great topics. Tell me what's on your mind about return to work.
For me, what's on my mind about return to work is we're still talking about return to work. It seems like, we've gone through these iterations of things have changed forever. Oh, no, wait, they haven't changed forever. And, employers trying to get employees back in the office with varying degrees of success. And it seems like employees have really kind of, voted with their feet by not, getting in their cars and driving to the office or getting on trains and going to the office. And just on everything that we're hearing is there's going to be a day of reckoning coming up in the fall for a lot of employers that are finally going to terminate employees who haven't gone back to the office yet. And so I think we're going to see employers that have hoped to realign the dynamic between management and labor back in their favor, tilt things back toward management, make some moves that ultimately they regret when they realize, wow, we've just fired a bunch of really, really key employees, and now we have to go out into a really tight labor market and try to replace them, and find that perhaps they should have rethought things.
Yeah. So is it your opinion that like most or, a majority of employees want to continue in a flexible hybrid work environment, and most or a majority of shareholders or executives who are basically working on behalf of the shareholders want people back in the office? Is that kind of where the divide is?
A little bit. I mean, I think that some of it too is kind of a coastal divide. I think that you're seeing on the West Coast and the East Coast, I mean, especially in large metropolitan areas where large employers have giant real estate investments in Class A office space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they definitely want to get employees back in the office, and I think a lot of employees are saying, I'm happy just working from home." But I think that remote work has its advantages, but it seems like when you look at the research that's coming out from different parties, it seems like most employees want to have some sort of a hybrid arrangement. I think that they see some benefit in going into the office from time to time, but I think that most employees, if you look at this research, they want to have more control over when that is and not be mandated to, you're going to be in the office every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or 5 days a week. I think that's a little less true when you get into the middle part of the country, where a lot of employment situations have been back in person for a while. But, when you look at the data, there's still a pretty significant chunk of the workforce that has been working from home, has been fully remote, and want to stay that way.
Yeah. And so early in the pandemic, which, let's say mid 2020, late 2020, we hypothesized that we are, at the front end of a new organizing principle. And, we talk about organizing principles all the time, but the big picture is that an organizing principle is when an event occurs that has such a dramatic impact on society and business that it creates a fault line. Some people fall on one side of the fault line, and some people fall on the other. Market leaders don't like new organizing principles or fault lines because it has the tendency to disrupt the field and the current leadership dynamic. The last organizing principle that we talk about all the time is, software as a service or the cloud. You had people who were on one side of the fault line saying, the cloud is dangerous. Everyone's going to steal your data, keep your servers in your closets. And you had a whole nother group saying, no, it's the future. And if you don't do it, you're going to miss out on, the next 20 years. And as things ended up, that was a true organizing principle. It results in a simple question: is this solution in the cloud or not? And if it wasn't, then people would go, buy something in the cloud. We hypothesized early on that the pandemic was an event that was going to drive a new organizing principle at work, in the market, in society, et cetera. And it would create a fault line, based on this notion of decentralization, and that things were going to become more decentralized across every aspect of society and work. And so you had, people who were defending the way things used to be. Everyone needs to be in the office. Everyone needs to be in a centralized, hierarchical, organization. And you had folks saying, no, the only thing that's going to work anymore is, an agile structure that's more decentralized, more autonomous, et cetera, et cetera. And so here we are at basically the judgment moment, right? Because the outward context or pretext for people working from home is kind of slipping away, whether it's truly slipping away or whether we're just ready to move past it. The notion that everyone must work from home for safety reasons is not as, significant as it was in 2020. And so this is kind of that moment where people have to decide, is this organizing principle, was it driven, completely by necessity, and now we need to get back to normal? Or did it, accelerate things that were kind of in motion for a long time? The winners are going to stay on, that trajectory. What do you think? I mean, is it time for people to, put the pandemic behind them as a pretext for folks not coming to the office and come back in and get back to work?
I think that, that dynamic has completely shifted. I don't think that this is about safety. I think that this is about just working preferences. And I think that a lot of people realize, hey, I can be just as effective and productive working from home. And a lot of this is, I mean, it's wrapped up, I think, with generational shifts in the office, Gen Z really beginning to come into the workforce, not having known really anything else than, this kind of crazy environment that we've been in. And I think that you're seeing the fact that, when there is a global skill shortage, there is just a shortage of needed skills across industries, across geographies. That hasn't changed and is only getting worse, if anything. And, basically, I think that, in the management labor divide, labor is really holding a lot of the cards. And you're seeing even companies like Goldman Sachs, they're facing an outright rebellion amongst their youngest workers, the bright, young minds that are coming out of MBA programs and, basically getting into these, you're going to work 80 to 100 hours a week and we're going to grind you in the ground, but it's great experience and you can either move up or move into something different. It's just like those employees are saying, no, I'm not going to do that. And I mean, they're seeing their business model threatened by the fact that employees really have more power and they've changed their priorities. And so I think that there is very much a threat to the traditional order of, the large employers that are used to having things their way, used to having employees in the office. Employees have options and they're using them. And so I don't see that horse going back in the barn, to continue with our cowboy metaphors. Yeah.
Well, and I think, a lot of folks who, who are pursuing this transformational employee experience or work experience are actually going to innovative startups. And, that includes things that people don't want to talk about, like DAOs on, who are working on blockchain projects and crypto projects and stuff. And that's one extreme of like, hey, I can work wherever I want. Check in my work whenever I want and have a transparent governance system that is not, it's trustless because you don't have to depend on people. It's coded into the blockchain around how we work together. So that's one extreme. But then you have this, kind of like almost in the middle of a lot of startups now are not, putting the center of the universe, of their universe, in Silicon Valley. They're not hiring people who can show up in the office in Silicon Valley. They're small 13, 20, 50 person companies who are, at the seed round or, Series A, and they are from the ground up creating a remote, work environment. And so I think the people who have the skills, to pay the bills, are pursuing work experiences that are being provided by the most innovative companies, which again is more evidence that that's, kind of part of that organizing principle, and there's going to be winners or losers, but there's also, a set of traditionalists who want to work in the office, and they want to work for companies who want to, bring folks into the office. So a lot of it comes down to attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs. And the match between an employer's attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs and the type of workforce they attract. All that being said, I think there's still an inherent disadvantage to, kind of older, bigger organizations fending off competitors because, last thing I'll say about it, unfortunately, some of these concepts like quiet quitting, which fucking drives me nuts, man. It's, how many more labels do we need for shit? It's like, okay, quiet quitting, right? Sounds great. Makes for, a great headline. But, quiet quitting gets wrapped up with this notion of if I can't see it, it's not happening. And so if you're a traditionalist executive and, or a conventional executive, and people are not willing to come back into the office, you might assume because of what you read in the press that they're quiet quitting when in reality they're kicking ass and you just don't have the, new leadership skills required to see what's happening. And so all these things are getting, kind of conflated with, people's decisions about a well-run business involves people coming back to the office or not. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it did. And I think that's, really it's a tension between the way things were and the way things are. And I think that a lot of, as you pointed out at the beginning of our conversation, there are a lot of, the leading employers, the, kind of the big employment brands that have a lot at risk, and they're seeing the advantage that they've enjoyed for the past, 10 or so years erode because, the most in-demand talent has options and they're exercising those options. And they don't care that you have really prime real estate in Hudson Yards in New York that you're paying through the nose for. They're not going in the office.
Remember when that used to be cool? It's like, oh my God, I love my what a great office you have. When we used to go around to like conference rooms and meet with people, what a wonderful view of the Bay.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Well, it's like I was walking around San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. It's just like, it was weird because I remember how things were in 2018, 2019. You walk out, on a Thursday morning or at lunchtime or whatever, it was just, crowded, and, the streets were full. It was a ghost town.
Yeah.
People aren't back in the office, and I don't think I don't think there's a going back. People have voted with their feet. They've decamped to parts elsewhere. And I just don't think that there's any going back to the way things were.
No. So, kind of moving on to the next topic then, we're kind of in this moment where the economy is very uncertain, like no one knows what the hell's going on. No one knows what the hell's going on. I hate to sound like such a skeptic when it comes to things like economic indicators and, like all these proven formulas for understanding we're about to go into a recession, blah, 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 right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is we have never experienced, like this crazy economic environment that we're in right now where there's, sure, we've had inflation in the past. Sure, we've had, we've hit job numbers, we've missed job numbers, we've had all of that stuff happen, but nobody knows what it means because of the incredible transformation that we went through as an organization. So increasingly, you report on this all the time, but I think we had one of our first down quarters in investment from a work tech perspective. There are people signaling, layoffs in a much more significant way. There are people who are delaying, their purchases of work tech after going through very long RFPs and actually selecting the winner and saying, hey, you definitely won, but we're going to delay this decision until 2023. And it seems to kind of strike at, this experience that we've had over and over around, building leadership momentum. And, really using uncertainty as an opportunity to surpass your competitors and to control the narrative in the marketplace. So what's going on in the market and how should people respond? And is this an opportunity to build leadership momentum? And lastly, are these distracting questions about return to work versus not versus, whatever, going to be a challenge for organizations who could actually build leadership momentum during this time of uncertainty?
Well, I think what's interesting is for work tech solution providers and work tech vendors, for the most part, they have, gone all in on, remote and hybrid work. So it's just like, they're seeing this as an opportunity because there are a lot of employers out there who don't have the tech stack that they need to create the employee experience and the work experience that is going to attract the best talent and also help you retain talent. So I think that, basically companies in the work tech space are seeing this as the opportunity that it is. There has been a noticeable slowdown in investment in work tech solutions. The past, 2-3 years have just been going gangbusters. That has slowed down. It's still
meaning from the investment community, not from like people buying work tech solutions, but from people who are investing in work tech companies.
Yeah. And so I think that, we've seen companies have to batten down the hatches. If they were counting on making their last funding round last 18 months, they're now looking at, 24, 36 months. They're just trying to stretch dollars. And some of that is really kind of being driven by their investors, not necessarily reflective of what they're experiencing in a sales environment. However, what you're seeing in a sales environment is very much the same sort of for most companies out there, very kind of schizophrenic. You see, on the one hand, a lot of companies that are buying, hand over fist, and a lot of companies that are pushing pause. And so, and it's not, there doesn't seem to be any critical mass one way or the other. I mean, companies still have hiring and retention problems, and they're looking to address that with these solutions. So that's not going away, even if there's a little bit of pause in the market. So,
but here's my point. HR people, some of them in, some companies may stop buying, but they don't stop dreaming, right? They don't stop thinking about what they want to change. And one of the things that, when we put together this, I know people are kind of sick of hearing about, organizing principles and, all of the work that we've done around that. But when we put that theory together, one of the, kind of proof points is when switching increases, right? So solution switching reaches all-time highs when you're in the middle of a new organizing principle. People are switching like crazy. You showed me one number about what was the percentage of people who would change their work tech solution if they could?
64% is some really excellent research from Sarah White over at Aspect 43. It's just like basically 2/3 of employers are not happy with their work tech solutions, and so the makings of an avalanche of solution turnover is there. And, I think that creates both risk, for you and your current customers, but also opportunity to gain market share.
But to go back to your point, it's like, work tech has selected, the remote work position, right? The majority of work tech vendors are behind, employee experience. They're behind hybrid or, remote work, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that they're investing in telling their story. It doesn't mean that they're investing in brand and investing in marketing. They may believe that it's the right thing to do, but you've got a lot of work tech companies who are actually pulling back on their own staffing. They're, having layoffs, and they're not investing in paid, earned, or owned media in a way that acknowledges that many of their competitors are pulling back because of the uncertainty. And so just because they have the, they're on the right side of the fault line, based on our, perspective, just because they're on the right side of the fault line doesn't mean they're not going to be a tree who fell in the forest when it comes to leadership momentum, unless they're actually investing and telling that story during uncertain times while their competitors are pulling back, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that you're seeing still plenty of brand investment among work tech companies. I mean, I was, flipping around channels, watching sports over the weekend, and there was a Paycom commercial. They've got a new campaign out, a really good one. And then, I was watching the this is the Mets game, and there's a big Just Works billboard on the outfield wall. And so companies in this space are still spending, and it's just like, this is the time to do it. At moments of inflection, that's when you need to hit the accelerator. And sometimes it's scary and it can be uncomfortable, but we're at a point in the market when, shifts in basically category field position occur.
Yeah. I mean, when you see that level of, indication around turnover, around solution switching, and you're also in a period of uncertainty, and there's a big story out there that some people agree with and others don't. I mean, if that's not enough evidence to folks that it's time to invest. I mean, how many work tech companies do you know, without naming names, how many work tech companies do you know who philosophically and from a product vision and a company vision come down on the side of, yes, more autonomy, more decentralization, more remote hybrid, work environment, more, et cetera, et cetera. And yet they're demanding that people come back to the office and they're turning down their, sales and marketing budgets to try to weather the, perception that a storm is on the horizon. Supposedly we've been in the middle of it for, years now, and it has yet to materialize, but, broken clock, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, yes, there will be a recession. It might be tomorrow. It might be 80 years from now, but if you keep predicting a recession, eventually it's going to happen, and you'll be right. But I mean, it hasn't happened yet. And it seems that if you want to succeed as a business, you have to align your own, kind of philosophies and decisions with what you are selling as your brand promise in the market. And so I see a lot of work tech companies who are, have tripled down on the message and the philosophical position of greater decentralization, and yet are demanding that people come back to the office and are turning down their, marketing budgets.
Yeah. And I mean, you see some of that, but I mean, I think that, I've seen more work tech companies more embracing remote and hybrid work. Even if they have an office, the only way you can access in-demand talent is to be willing to hire remotely. And I mean, when I'm having conversations with people looking for talent, they have to be in X location has evaporated as a critical requirement. In terms of, spending on marketing budget, we've definitely seen a tightening of that, really, more driven by CFO mandates than by anything CMOs are feeling or experiencing. I think that they're being told, hey, you need to cut this much for right now. But I mean, the conversations that we're having are, even if projects are paused or purchase decisions for, marketing campaign services, et cetera, are slowing down. I mean, everyone I'm talking to is they're still, we're going to get this approval. It's going to be next week or next month. It's just like, this is just, I think, a pause. And I'm anticipating that as we get into the fall, reality of you're getting close to the end of the year, maybe not the year that every company anticipated, but everybody's got to hit their number. And so I think that you're going to see companies get a little more free with how they're spending, simply because reality sets in.
Well, I guess to wrap up, based on the conversation that we've had, my basic advice to shareholders of work tech companies or to executives who are, balancing their responsibility to employees and customers and shareholders, if they're not shareholders themselves, is pretty straightforward. First of all, focus on your own employee experience. It's still the biggest issue that I see with work tech companies in terms of their ability to succeed, is that their own employee experience for many companies tends to have a negative impact on their brand promise, when their brand promise is all about employee experience. And so that means staying on, in our opinion, the right side of the fault line when it comes to remote and hybrid work and flexibility, and, a lot of the quote pandemic era benefits, that were put in place that are really attractive to the best and the brightest folks out there. So number one is focus on your own employee experience. And number two is view this as an opportunity to build leadership momentum, because times are uncertain, and a lot of organizations, CEOs and boards are, demanding cost cutting measures. And that creates a huge opportunity. There most certainly will be a turnover of leadership over the next 10 years based on the fault line that has been created by this organizing principle. And if past is prelude, it's going to be the next 3 to 5 years that sets some companies on the trajectory of moving from relative obscurity to building the tallest skyscraper in San Francisco, Salesforce.com. Oh, that'll be a metaphoric skyscraper, probably in the metaverse somewhere, because no one's going to do that anymore. But it's this period when a new organizing principle is at play and people are picking sides that, kind of separates, the major new players from folks who, miss out. So that's my advice. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think that's very true. This, if you're looking for, how this is similar to previous times, this reminds me a lot more of, 2001 than it does 2010 or, 2015. And I think that, there are giant brands that are going to emerge over the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see companies that are going from 10 million in ARR to billion-dollar companies faster than you could ever imagine. And so, it's just, and it's all about the moves that they're going to make, in 22, 23, and 24.
Yeah. Well, look at companies, like Gather. We're at that same period in 2001, that bubble period, and, famous economists saying that the internet would have about the same net impact on society as the fax machine, et cetera, et cetera. And we lost 90%, of those companies, but the 10% who remained created like the most robust technology market in history.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're at that same period again. And so if you look at companies like Gather, who, really do, they're just in the beginning stages of developing what a lot of, like work tech solutions are going to look like in the future. I mean, if I were going to pick a company that is likely to have a 10 to 15 year trajectory the way that Salesforce did, it'd probably be Gather. And companies like Gather, and, people are going to roll their eyes and be like, oh, that's metaverse, Web 3.0, blah, 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 blah. But I would recommend check. They're not a client. Full disclosure, they're not a client. We've had some conversations with them, but I would check them out because they represent a lot of what the world looks like in the future. I think, and I think they're also more of a platform play. And people look at organizations like that, companies like that, and they think, oh, that's a neat app or a neat solution or whatever, but they don't see like what it's built on and how extensible it is. And that's a whole category of solutions out there.
Awesome. Well, it's been good to reconnect, Brett.
Yeah, man. Good talking to you. Let's do it again next week.
Let's do it, man.
Oh, that's your line, isn't it?
Yeah, let's do it again next week. How's that?
I'm sorry. Let's do it. I agree. I concur. Bye.
Resolved. Bye.